All right, we did introductions. You guys know who I am. Now we're going to get down to the meat of things. Performance. Anybody want to take a quick guess what performance of their website has to do with SEO? Hands raised. No? Would that mean that you all have no idea how performance has anything to do with SEO?
Well, I know for me, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I know for me that
Go to the back of class.
I'm raising my hand. I know for me that performance of my website ties directly into my search engine optimization on Google and everything that I'm doing there. And I also use the pixel on Facebook that's integrated into the platform of, social media. So all of that ties in together with performance. So your analytics will all be cohesive and precise.
True enough. How about just the performance? What do you consider the performance of your website?
Well, the performance for me is my engagement, how many people are going to my website, and how long they're on the website. I can see those stats. So the performance of basically how your website is doing.
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Austin Lee, did you have a guess?
The core web vitals of your website are a ranking factor. How well your website loads and performs can actually determine where you end up in search.
Well, I couldn't have said it better. Melissa, did you get all that? So there's a big difference between who's watching and who's doing things and how your analytics are going and how the actual website is performing for the search engines. Why does it have anything to do with SEO? Because if your website performs poorly, you're never going to get into the top of the search engines. So it's critical to go through some tools, which we did show some tools last week, and we'll go through those again today, or at least a couple of them. But you need to understand what your site is doing, how well, what the search engines are looking at, what they think of your site. Because if they don't think highly of your site and the way that it performs, then your site gets pushed back several pages. And I know that, Barbara, you're here for performance in specific because you were having the discussion. Do you have questions to begin with, or do you want us to just go through?
Well, the discussion, and you can stop me and come back to the answer if you need to. So the discussion is that most of my web pages seem to be performing really well. They're up hovering around 90% if I check them on GTmetrix.
Oh, we gotta stop there for a second. Are you using the paid version of GTmetrix?
No.
You are viewing the
Lighthouse.
You're viewing the desktop numbers.
Right.
We don't care about desktop. We want mobile.
Right. My mobile is shitty.
Oh, well, at least that's being honest. There you go.
Yeah, no, but also since it's so heavy on photos, it's taken a while to clean everything up so that it's, considering it's so heavy on photos, most of my pages, desktop, are up around 90%. The home page is down around 75 because it's got some big photos on the home page. So within this whole discussion about mobile and trying to see where everything can get boosted, I'm on a virtual private server. My developer suggested I go to Nexus, if anybody's familiar with Nexus, which is considerably more expensive. It's a cloud, I think it's a cloud server, but they have Magento specific dedication as well. And then I was talking to my current hosting company and we had a discussion about Cloudflare. And I don't
Well,
know if anybody's familiar with that, but he thought for mobile, it would probably give me some boost. So
100
that's where I'm at.
100% it will. Yeah, it 100% will give you some boost.
Who's
And as
who's
far
okay, TJ? Okay.
yeah, as far as the images, is if you just save this to a new style like a file format, like a WebP or something, WPB, that'll help those files be much faster. And there's software you can use to do that. Do you have a WordPress site?
No, Magento.
Okay, Magento, something like that. They probably have a plugin that you can use that will automatically go and resize your photos and save them to a new file format. And then using something like Cloudflare, which is like a CDN, will absolutely help.
What was that app?
Well, using something like Cloudflare, that's basically like a CDN. I don't know if you know what that is.
Right, but the other thing, the whatever you
Well,
mentioned.
different. I'm not sure what the exact plugin, but that's what you want to look for. Like WordPress has something that's called like Mush, where it goes and it does
Oh,
that through your photos automatically.
Yeah,
But then you want something like CDN to serve up the images as well,
Right.
to help speed that up.
And then the question within that is that Cloudflare has a free, free buy-in with, limited resources. And one of them is not, photo optimization, but the $20 a month includes the photo optimization and a couple other things. And I was just going to start with the free one.
Absolutely will help.
To see what it does. So,
Well, optimally, you really need to optimize your images before you even upload them.
well, they are optimized, but I mean, I could optimize them more, but it's such a visual medium as an online retailer that there's a very, I'm on the fence with where the photos start to degrade and don't look as good, and where they pass, so it's sort of a and every photo is different because some of them aren't my photos, they're manufacturer's photos, so they all come out optimized a little bit differently. So
Got several things going on. I want to share the screen to be able to go over to take a look at your site, because I think it's going to be easier to discuss it that way. All right, so I'm going to take a look at just images on this page. And Firefox does this nicely because it shows me the images without having to dig into anything. Okay, here's a prime example. See if I can get you guys to understand this. I'm not sure if I can share this one with you, but I'll see. Here we go. YouTube won't be able to see it, but the group will. You see this small window that I popped up with Firefox? Barbara, do you see this window?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's this little image right here
Yeah.
of the palm leaves.
Yeah.
That image is 1014 by 461.
Yeah. It can definitely be smaller.
Yes, that image was loaded and said, go ahead, software and browser, you figure out what size it's supposed to be. That's the kind of thing that really kills performance.
Right.
And
That's probably the only picture on there that really isn't optimized and I've just never gotten back to it.
Well, it's that next image that really needs to be smaller. I mean, converting, using, taking the images and converting them to WebPs is
That's only
probably
part
what you
down.
need most at this point.
Because I can't lose any, I can't have the image degraded from what it is.
Well, I remember you were saying that before, and I wanted to stop you.
Yes,
When you're only capable of viewing a 72 DPI image on the net. Doesn't make any difference if it's a 300 DPI, the browser can only support a 72. It cannot display 300 DPI. So every image that you have can be reduced to a 72 DPI because you're not going to get better than that anyway.
I'm gonna say, and I know there are some that aren't because I have thousands of photos, but I'm gonna say pretty close to 95% of them are all 72.
Okay. And then the other part of that is making sure that the images are only the size that will be displayed. And this top image that is not a slider, but it's showing you several different images. One of them is 2049 by 931, and it's being viewed at 1963 by 892. So there again, images can be difficult. And this is not even what I would say is probably your heaviest page for images. You've
It
got,
actually is.
you think
I
this is
mean,
more than a page that has all a particular,
all the listings, no, I guess not, but for some reason, those seem to be faring better. But I think a lot of them are I don't know. I don't have an answer.
see the picture with the palms. There's a couple of different ones in there. Care about that one. 600 being reduced to a 312 by 451. So there are several images on the home page that can be reduced.
One of the matrix to the core vitals is properly sizing the images. So if you have an image, even if it's a WebP or if it's a SVG, whatever, if it's not properly sized, you're still going to throw that red flag, whether it's a WebP or not. So properly sizing the images is part of the core vitals.
Does that make sense, Barbara?
Yes, and that has always been it's been tricky, let me just say that. And probably the most difficult part about that.
Well,
And yet I look at other, websites and their files are huge. If I pull up, but they're huge.
To begin with, that's just one of the things. And going back to something that was said, when you do a search and you're looking at competition, or you're looking at some of the big sites that are in the top page, in the first page of results up at the top, if you're viewing that in a desktop, that's completely different and outside of what you're going to find for cell phones, for a mobile device. A lot of people don't understand that the results, the search results, all the pages are in the same database, but if it doesn't pass the speed test, then Google doesn't present that in the mobile searches. But you will see it in the desktop. So in other words, if you're using your desktop to do a search and you're going, well, this guy's got this huge site and all these images that are huge, or does all these things wrong, but he's in the top, so why can't I be there? You're talking apples and peanuts. You have to look at the mobile searches to see if that site is listed on the top page. That's the point where I would say, well, now we need to look at that and say, wait a second, how is this site with all these things wrong in the mobile searches? Well, I haven't seen that yet, and I'm waiting to hear somebody say that they have. So keep that in mind when you are doing your research. Watch Lighthouse, because if Lighthouse tells you that it's way down in the 60s, it's not going to appear for mobile devices. And developer after developer argues that point, but you have to understand, if you're searching with a desktop, you're not seeing what mobile devices see. Does that make sense, Barbara?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Confused more?
no, it just seems like you almost need a website that is a separate website like Milkshake that is specifically.
You're honing in on where a lot of people are and where developers just refuse to understand that that's where we are now. It isn't something that's coming up. Google has made this switch. If your pages don't perform, which is what this meeting is about, if they're not going to perform well enough, they won't be in the mobile search results. So whatever you're using, make sure that it is in a mobile device, and do a search with your mobile device. Is that same bloated site on page 1 or not? And like I say, you'll have developer after developer argue that point, but until you do it with a mobile device and do that exact same search on that mobile device, you're not going to find the same answers, or you're not going to have the answers that you want. Trust Lighthouse, test it on a couple of different things, and maybe even use something else. But GTmetrix is only going to show you desktop search results unless you pay for GTmetrix.
Right, because that's the only way you'll get the mobile. And with them also, even though your page says 100%, 98%, you need to scroll down and see how many seconds it takes, because they're not basing their percentages on load time, on speed. So if you scroll down, you'll see, I've seen sites at 100%, and you scroll down and you'll see they're at 4.5 seconds on mobile, or on load, fully loaded. That's when you need to get into the waterfalls and find out what fonts are slowing your site down, your images. The only thing I use GTmetrix for is finding what is slowing the site down. And it'll give you the breakdown of, all the detail that you need to know. It'll show whether it's WebP. Lighthouse would do the same thing, but with GTmetrix, it's just easier to read, easier to find.
And looks like
But a lot of, places like Pingdom and things like that, I don't use them, because a lot of times when you're using a regular browser, you got caching and cookies involved, and you need to, you should be using an incognito window to avoid that.
And it's just like using this. This is going to have some interference, but you can begin here. And if you don't have Chrome, it's easy enough to install. What do you usually use, Barbara?
For,
Browsing? Chrome or Firefox?
I use both. I mean, some of the platforms that I'm on, other platforms, Amazon, some other things, they work best on Firefox. And they're a little glitchy on Chrome. And I'm actually on a Mac, and I can't use Safari on anything. So,
Well, it looks like from what I see on screen now, I mean, everything is, I don't see any, I mean, is there any caching or anything are they doing? I mean, I don't think I've seen I don't think I've ever seen a site where everything's red. You know, I mean, even the cumulative layout shift is not good.
And could this be better if I was using incognito or the private window in Firefox? Yes, but it's so far down that you have to look at it and go, it's not going to be that big a difference.
Yeah, the time to interact, that's for when it's fully loaded. I mean, look, the speed index is 20 seconds. I mean, there's something definitely, the thing about Magento, let me say that, the thing about Magento, I mean, it's already heavy. You know, and anybody who's ever worked with it and knows about optimization, they'll all say that Magento is really tough to try and optimize. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers now and I can see, you know, I mean, what I do on
but
site,
what's funny is it doesn't seem this long. You know, it's like if I'm using my phone, it's not this long.
it you have to go by what the metrics are telling you. I mean, you may have a fast phone while other people don't. You know, and what you see there is, you know, it has to be improved.
Oh, but my SEO is 92.
Yeah.
But
And that's why you got a lot of that's why you got a lot of terms on the first page.
I just, yeah, I mean, I just don't know what to do with that. Anyway, I mean, I think the way I'm gonna go is to try Cloudflare and see what that does.
Well, what I would suggest is finding somebody who knows Magento.
Yes, I have someone.
Well, if they know Magento, they should know how to optimize that.
can you see the incognito window? 38, 79, 83.
Yeah, it's a little better, but
Right.
yeah, scroll down. Yeah, the speed index is much.
And I do notice that this changes, you know, depending on, like, if I'm just checking it, depending on where I am or what time of day it is.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Sure.
I don't know.
But it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, it won't even be as big a difference as what you're seeing between what we had on Firefox and what I'm showing you on incognito. You will see a change. You could come back and do the exact same thing with incognito in 20 minutes and see that the numbers are slightly different.
Right.
But overall is kind of what you're looking for. If you see these kind of numbers, you go, well, I don't need to memorize it. I just need to know that I've got to do a lot of work.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't know that it's a difficult situation with Magento and your specific site, because I know you have to have the images, but it's very similar to the photography site, Blair Seats has been working on. I mean, yours is completely different subject matter, but you're dealing with a lot of pictures. And the
Right.
one thing that we were trying to point out for him is concentrate on the home page to get it performing very well. Because the internal pages are laden with images. And if you have one that doesn't have so many, then concentrate on that. But the ones that, you know, you're pushing a huge rock up the hill, save those for last. Work on the ones that you can get to load quickly enough that stand a chance to get in those Google search results. Matt, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out there is a lot of other little things on the site that are contributing to this, not just the pictures. The carousel at the top, that takes a long time to load historically in most websites I see. The pop-up for your lead generation, from what I've seen in studies and heat maps and things, that is the first thing that people close when they get to a website. So it adds load to your website without adding any actual benefit to you. So you may actually be better off doing a contact form towards the top that is very easy to access for people and just getting rid of that pop-up, and that suddenly increases your scores dramatically.
So,
man, you're
so
right.
quick question on that. See that VIP offer tab on the side?
Mm-hmm.
That is connected to the pop-up. So I can probably stop the actual pop-up. Would the load still be there because I have it attached to this VIP offer?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
there's-
Because I agree with you. I know I close those things too, but I want to have it available to people if they want to use it. So that's why I put it in the tab.
Yeah, that's a good way to implement it without being right in a person's face, because usually I find that in because I run a marketing agency. My wife handles our web design, and that's the first thing she does away with a new site. If we bring one in from a customer, is we get rid of that pop-up and we simply put in an easy to access contact form, which your VIP button does.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it actually, if you click on it, it's the same form that pops up.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, is the load the same, or should I change that VIP offer tab, or just because it doesn't pop up, it will reduce the load?
Yeah, just because it doesn't pop up, because especially with
Okay.
a lot of these, it seems like many times those pop-ups are some of the bottom things in the HTML for the page to read. So that's where you get these really long load times, because it gets through the entire page and then it has to do the pop-up before it can even show anybody anything on the screen.
Okay. Well, I'll take that off. I mean, I'll turn it off or whatever. So
Yeah, anything that takes time to load above the fold, which is your hero and your header section.
right.
Okay, and that pop-up you have there, the browser's waiting for that to load,
Okay.
you know, and another, one of the mistakes that, you know, sliders do the same thing.
I know.
Yeah, and one of the mistakes people do is they lazy load everything. And anything in the, you know, lazy load is good, but in the above the fold, you don't want to lazy load anything. You want it to be immediate. So, you know, animation, things of that nature are gonna throw your page speed off.
So a question while we've been talking about this, I did some conversions to the WebP, and I did a JPEG that was 94 KB, and I saved it as a WebP, and now it's 340 KB.
You're going the wrong direction.
Why? So any thoughts on that?
Compression needed sounds like it didn't compress it.
What did you use to change that?
I was in Photoshop and I went to save as, which is what Matt suggested. And
Right.
I'm saving to my computer and I'm selecting WebP. And I'm saving to desktop. I don't see any, the only other thing that I have to check is there's a box that's embedded color profile, which is I left unchecked.
Oh,
Or am I,
that- That's a lot of information that's in the image.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's something that I would have to see. I would recommend if you're having a difficult time going back and check with the paint.net.
okay. I mean, is it, I'm
kinda-
assuming it's supposed to reduce the size.
And I was even hoping to try to get this back to a 1 hour discussion, but even though that this has been about this one website, a lot of it has to do with everybody's individual website. The performance is the general thing that we're talking about. The page speed is only part of the performance. So there are a lot of things that play a big part in the performance of your website. I want to see if we can field a few more questions. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else having issues with their site?
Yeah, why don't we take somebody who's having issues with their site and see, pull it up and see what we can do.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to see, if anybody wanted to raise their hand saying that they're having issues with their site. Or if they're having a hard time, or even different, if you've got questions about the discussion that we've had thus far. Let's dissect that for you, so you understand better about what you want to do in performance. What were these numbers that we had up? Any questions on any of that information? Not sure.
Thomas?
Any hands?
Yes.
Everybody understand?
I have a question, how far behind I am with what you're doing. But I just, in all of this discussion, you talked about using paint.net to
Yes.
size your pictures that you're going to put on your website. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Paint.net is a free software program that's just for images. You can resize them, you can crop them, you can do all kinds of things with that, and it's a free application. And
Okay, and you
web-
can use that to put, I'm sorry.
sorry, it's one of those that one of the formats that it will save as is WebP. It's,
Okay,
if you spent a day messing around with it, you'd go, you know what, this is a pretty fast little program. And it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that Photoshop does, but it's free.
okay. And it would be somewhere I could start on my
Yeah,
photos.
if you wanted to mess with your own images, you can open up any image that you want, a PNG, a GIF, a JPEG, a WebP. It's pretty much
Okay.
any file format that's out there, it'll work with.
Because I'm, at ground level here. So anything I can learn to get started to size things to put on my website would be great. Because I just,
Paint.net's a good place to start. That's like you
Okay.
could grab that, and it's easier to understand how to use that one than it is Photoshop. But I'm sure that Barbara would say the same thing. Photoshop's a lot to wrap your head around.
that's what I'm afraid of.
Using it for quite a while, and still it's like, well, I'm not sure if it's this or that, because it has so much that it does. And that's great if you're really doing that kind of work, but when you get into simple things, most of the people in our meetings and most of the people working on our website, they're just doing simple things. That's
And you
great.
su- Yeah, you suggested that I take all 39 of my book covers and put them on the first page, all of them tiny. Could I use paint.net to do that?
You can resize any image that you wish, and you can say that
Okay,
to Pete. Just make sure that you don't try to go to paint.net because that's not where it's found. It's the name of the program is paint.net.
paint.net.
Yeah, if you do a
Okay,
search on that. Let's see if I can find that real quick here for you. Let's go. I separate the two words, and there's paint.net right there. It's getpaint.net.
get paint.net.
And it's been around for a long time, but they keep it up. It's basically, if you wanted to, you could say that it's overly simplistic. Yes, that's a good thing.
I had heard of it, but I had never used it. And it's just paint.net. Okay,
I think
I'm gonna start there with my
I think
page.
Matt may have put that in the queue. I'm going to put it in here. I put it in the chat for everybody, so you can just click on that and go get paint.net.
Okay, thank you.
And I think there was another question. And somebody's saying, I have Photoshop Elements 11. Can I use this program? I'm not familiar with that particular program, but if it works for you to do what you need to do, then you can use whichever you like. Doesn't make a darn bit of difference, but in other words, if you can resize pictures, you can edit them, you can crop them, sure. So Dara, I'm hoping that that helps you. I'm not sure about Photoshop Elements, so I couldn't answer the question. I like to use simple programs because the simple software is much easier to tell people about and provide that to them to use. If I was using some really fancy software and I didn't ever go back to something like paint.net, it's pretty difficult. Well, if you use this fancy software, you could do all this stuff. But nobody's, it's expensive for those things too. Dara is in the chat saying I'd like to use for cleaning photos. Can you explain what you mean by cleaning photos?
Yes. I am using Elements 11 to, like sometimes I have a photo that I need to, it's like background is bad. So when I take the photos, so then I just try to do the stamp, or I need to know like how to make the different background. So that's what I'm doing Elements. Like I there's so many subscription and I am overwhelmed with this. I just try to use it, something that I you don't need to keep paying for.
You actually came up, you didn't ask the question that I was thinking, which is part of what you were saying, is if you're a novice at this, where's a good place to start at trying to figure out what to do with images and what do you use? You'll find a lot of software out there for manipulating images.
Mhm.
Finding the easy stuff, finding something that's simple to do what you need
Yeah.
to do is difficult. I wouldn't recommend paying for stuff until you find something that, yes, that's really what I need to have done. So you're dealing with photographs that you've taken. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, then I'm using that background and I I can't get another models. I just want to use that. So it's a lot of work. Or cleaning. They were having socks and they have a Puma socks, the models. So I have to clean up the Puma socks. Yeah, and it kind of worked pretty good. So I was using the stamp tool on Elements, but yeah, and then I go through the tutorials on Google. I just Google it. So
Well, I
yeah.
think that if it's working for you to clean up the images, then that's great.
Yeah.
Always keep in mind, and I know I say this a lot, but remember that on the internet, pictures that are a high resolution are useless
Mhm, mhm.
because you won't see higher than 72 DPI.
Yeah, but the selling clothing or anything, you need to have some detail to really show the texture, because how would you, if you sell clothing online, how would you really show the client what the clothing looks like if you have like a blurry photo?
If- Well, no, you're correct. If it's blurry, you need to have at least a picture that's clean so that it's clear, doesn't
Yeah.
have any blur to it. And of
Mhm.
course, that comes with the image itself. If you are taking the image, then you want it to, you know how to put it in a tripod and make sure that it's a good picture. But if you're grabbing something from somewhere else, you do have to clean it up as well as you can, but you may not be able to do it. Even with all the cleaning that you do and all the things that you do to an image, you just need to keep in mind that people are only going to see that image at a 72 DPI
Yeah.
resolution.
Mhm.
So I know that this particular subject, performance, gets into a lot of things, ways over. So it's something that we've taken up some general information about performance today, but I think that we're going to take a smaller part at another time. So I'm trying to come back, bring everybody back to a general performance issue. So if you've got performance issues in your website, I'd like to hear from you so we can try to help you out in this phase. And we will get into more things that you can do as we go down the line, different meetings. We got any additional questions to what we've gone over so far? But I'll take a couple of last questions. Velda, go ahead.
I got one more question. I'm thinking of my website and all these pictures.
Mhm.
You said text is really important.
Yes.
So plant the pictures out of the way and use a lot of text, or scatter the text through the pictures. Either way works, right?
Well, SEO is all about your text. It's
Mhm.
not about your images. If
Okay,
You can think of it a different way. You have text on a page. That's what SEO is all about. So you write it correctly and you can get good grades for doing the SEO. Now, if you add an image, you're adding something that can drop your SEO. It can take away from your SEO performance, depending on how you use that image. So if it's a huge image, it's not optimized, and you slapped it in a page. If you went from 100% with your SEO and definitely you're on page one, throwing that image into the page could push you several pages back in the search results. Not that it's guaranteed to, but that's how critical it is to make sure that your images are optimized and sized properly so it doesn't pull down the SEO portion, which is your text on the page.
okay.
Does that help?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it does. Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, any other questions? If you're talking to us, Barbie, you're muted. Oh, okay. Talking to herself. All righty then. Well, I thank you folks for joining today, and we'll see you again next week.